Thank you, Ms. Gill, for hosting us tonight. Welcome, everyone, to the Community Connections Listen and Learn for Pinellas County Schools. I am Dr. Seymour Brown, as mentioned, Director of Strategic Partnerships, and I will be your host and moderator this evening. The purpose of this series is to provide an opportunity for our stakeholders of Pinellas County to engage with the school board, district leadership, and the superintendent, which is imperative in promoting continuous improvement for our students, families, staff, and community. Following the success of the Superintendent's Listen and Learn series last fall, we expanded this type of stakeholder engagement. Our sessions represent the commitment of the school board and the superintendent to be visible in the community as we continue to strengthen partnerships in the district and within our school communities. The session here tonight at Bogosiga High School is the fourth of a series of 5 annual community meetings in alignment with the district's 5 school areas. Each of the sessions takes place at a school within the given area or zone. Tonight is Area 3. Hosting our sessions by area and zone allows the school board, superintendent, and district leadership who serve those schools to be present and to hear directly from those stakeholders. PCS Community Listen and Learn series are open to all stakeholders, students, families, staff, partners, and community members. To start things off, I would like to first give an opportunity for our school board members and the superintendent to introduce themselves and welcome our stakeholders. School Board Vice Chair Hine, would you like to start the introduction?
I'm very glad to. Thank you, Dr. Brown. Good evening. I'm so happy to be here with you, and I'm happy that all of you chose to come spend a couple of hours with us. Thank you, and I hope you ask any kinds of questions that are on your mind tonight. My name is Laura Hine. Born and raised in Tampa, went to K-12 schools over there. Don't hold it against me, it's just across the bridge. I graduated from Chamberlain High School, went to the U.S. Naval Academy for college, studied aerospace engineering, jumped out of airplanes with the Army, served as an officer in the Navy for 6 years after that. When I came back home, I became a licensed general contractor. I would say my time at the Naval Academy and at the Navy was definitely a place where teamwork, leadership, and self-sacrifice were imbued in me. And then in construction, over a number of years, I really saw the way that the beauty of a space, but as well as the strength of a space, those two things have to come together to yield an excellent product that will also last. I then was a museum director actually for a little bit of a while, but that was my career path along the way, a little bit later than most. I had children. I have a 4th grader at North Shore Elementary and a 7th grader at John Hopkins Middle School. It was when my 7th grader was coming of age for school that I became so passionate about public education and ultimately wound up asking to be on the school board, which thank you for that opportunity. There are several things that I'm passionate about. It is such a huge, amazing opportunity in organization to really help human potential thrive. A couple things that I would mention to you is I really think we have to have strong programs across pathways for our students, whether they want to be a mechanic or a physicist or they want to be a scientist or a salesman. There have to be all kinds of pathways, and they need to be available and excellent in any of those categories. And I think we've done a really good job of that over the last several years. I'm actively involved in school safety as a member of our district school safety committee. And I think youth mental health is a major issue these days, and that's something that I'm actively involved in as well. I was inspired today. I got to spend some time with the Students' Rights and Responsibility group, and they showed me where they are in getting involved in civic engagement. You know, our democracy is not a spectator sport, said by George Shultz a number of years ago, and I think that that's really true. And these students today who were there were asking amazing questions and had a lot of energy and a lot of input about their schools, and I really appreciate that. So if you look at our students, I think we have a very bright future ahead. Thanks for being here.
Good evening, thank you. My name is Dawn Peters. I am a Pinellas County School Board member as of last November. I am very proud to serve on the Pinellas County School Board. I have seen the way school boards are functioning across the state, and I just am very, very proud of the way our district and my fellow school board members, we all act with respect and integrity toward each other. So I think that represents how our district is being run. So of course there are ways to improve. I look forward to hearing all of your questions tonight, and I will just echo most of what Ms. Hines said. And I'm proud to be here and hear from you all tonight. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Kevin Hendrick, Pinellas County Schools Superintendent, starting my second year in this role after serving the previous 5 years as our district's Chief Academic Officer. Before that, I was a high school principal, a high school teacher, and a graduate of our schools and a longtime resident of Pinellas County. As superintendent, of course, I receive direction from our 7-member school board, but oversee the day-to-day operations of our 128 schools, our over 100,000 students, and everything from pre-K through our technical colleges and everything in between. So tonight, we're looking forward to giving you some information about the school district. Look forward to a little bit of a Q&A and answering individual questions as well. So I'll pass it back to Dr. Brown.
Thank you. I want to do a quick overview of the agenda tonight before we get started. Superintendent Hendricks will give an overview. He will start us off. Next, we will conduct a Q&A with the superintendent and board members. As you came in this evening or on your tables, you will find index cards which you can write your questions. If you need an additional index card or have written your questions already, just raise your hand and a staff member will be by to collect and provide you with another card. For those online, you can enter your questions in the chat. Following the Q&A, there will be an opportunity for all stakeholders to provide feedback for the district's strategic plan and the current district cell phone policy. Superintendent Hendrick will give a brief overview of the strategic plan and cell phone policy. Everyone then will be able to directly write feedback that will be collected and compiled. During this time, superintendent and board members will be present and will continue to speak with all stakeholders. Superintendent Hendrick, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. And thank you again to our parents and community members that are here tonight coming out. I know there's, I think, also a school concert going on tonight here at Boca Ciega and a number of other events, so thank you for being here. I want to just start by giving a brief overview of the district, a little bit about academics, some of the things we're working on, and then get into a few of the highlights in terms of some national recognitions. But first, I want you to know that our board, our 7-member board, focuses hard on making sure we are aligned to the community and to the expectations of what we want to see for our children. So we have a vision of 100% student success, a mission of preparing each student for college and career in life, and a set of core values that guide our work, and it guides our district strategic plan that I'll talk about in a few minutes. So first, a little bit about academics. As many of the parents know in this room, last year we had new standards and a new state assessment called the Florida Assessment for Student Thinking. And as you have new assessments, anytime the state does that, this is the 3rd set of new assessments in the last 15 years in Florida, it takes about a full year for the state to fully process those results before they're able to say, here's a traditional school grade or a district grade like many are familiar with over the last 2 decades. So in the interim of those things, the only thing you can really do is compare yourselves to other districts. So if your district had this percentage versus this other district, and then eventually they'll sort of score and rate those. So for a couple of months since the summer when we received our school results, we've been using these couple of slides to sort of show our progress in this interim year as these new assessments come. But soon we'll retire these slides because next week the state board will actually set the final cut scores, and then sometime in the month or so after that release tentative school grades for the year that was now started a year and a half ago. But in the meantime, you can see on the left there, Pinellas County School students, as compared to the other 10 largest districts in the state, scored first in mathematics proficiency on the new Florida Assessment for Student Thinking. And we're really proud of that performance of our students and schools. You can see where the state is, and certainly being first of those large districts is a great feat for our students. In English Language Arts, we finished 3rd of the 10 largest districts, about in line with the rest of the state. And in both cases, these rankings were sort of our highest rankings in quite some time in terms of comparing us to other large districts across the state. So we're proud of the work of our teachers and students in that transition year and looking forward to continued good work coming up. In addition to math and ELA, we also had science assessments. Those science assessments that you see here did not change over the last couple of years. In fact, the 5th and 8th grade science tests have been the same for over 2 decades now. And so in 5th grade science, Pinellas County students did really phenomenal, finishing in the top 7 districts in the state with 60% of students scoring proficient, which was 9 points ahead of the state. 8th grade science was also ahead of the state. Biology, which is an individual course assessment, the end of course exam in high school, was below the state. So work to do there, but certainly a good foundation in 5th and 8th grade. Overall, the district rankings in each of these areas that make up the school grades and the district grades, again, we don't have a final score for our district or really any of our school grades, and we will have those perhaps here in a couple of weeks. But all you can really do at this point is compare yourselves to the other districts. So there are 67 traditional school districts across the state of Florida, 67 counties, 67 districts. And you can see where Pinellas County School students fared, starting with English Language Arts and Mathematics, which I shared where we compared to the other 10 largest districts, and then science, biology, algebra, geometry, civics, and U.S. history. In 5 of the 8 cases in this last year, our students performed better than they had at any point in the last 5 years. So we're proud of the progress that we're making, but certainly still room to grow. One of the big things I've pushed as superintendent in the last year and a half is the idea of the student experience. One of the things during the pandemic that we felt we did pretty well was transition to digital learning and the idea of every student having a laptop and a wireless hotspot at home if they needed it. And our teachers became very good about delivering content digitally. And while that's great, we don't want that to be the experience our students have in classrooms. So many times now, because digital learning can be so powerful, if that's the only thing they get in school, or if all they get is just a textbook, then why do they need to come? What is the reason? What is the experience in the classroom that causes me to want to come beyond just this, hey, I'm getting something through a computer? And so while we're thrilled to have one-to-one in our classrooms, that's not really what we want to see. We want those computers to be used for extensions of learning after school. We want that teacher in front of the class to be the leader of instruction. We want students collaborating. And honestly, we want them to have fun in class, right? We don't want it to be a situation where here's the book, read it, here's the computer, get behind it, but instead get in there, talk to one another, and do things that you can't do if you just sat behind that computer, that you couldn't do on your own. So that's what that student experience is about. And in doing that, do it with high expectations. This message is a little old now, but going back a year and a half, and really the 2 years before that, we were just happy that people were coming to work. We were happy that students were healthy enough to come to school. And during the pandemic, that was okay. But really, now we're to the point where we should expect excellence in our results. We should expect excellence across the board from our employees and our students and our families. And so those have been 2 major themes that I've had as superintendent. Let's enhance that student experience, and let's really set high expectations for everything we do. And so across those themes, a couple things that have happened in the last year. One is the launching of a student leadership summit. I hosted 4 different summits for students, 2 elementary summits, 1 middle, 1 high school, where we invited 10 or 12 students from every school to really push this idea of leadership. And I wanted to get some feedback from them as students, but we wanted them to be able to go back and really develop leadership skills at their schools. And so we had a great partner with the University of South Florida, St. Petersburg, who hosted those summits for us, and we'll be doing those again this coming January and February. We really pushed field trips last year, and I hope if you're a parent here, your child had the opportunity to experience some of those. Because of that sort of lack of field trips over a couple of years of the pandemic, we wanted to really kind of put that on steroids and accelerate that in the last year, and it goes along with that experience. And so that's become sort of a regular way of pushing those, connecting it to content that you learn about, but then getting out. We're so lucky to live in Pinellas County, where we have so many museums, so many local opportunities for local history, so many experts in the field, opportunities to get into outdoor classrooms. And so we really wanted our students to take advantage of those. You can see a number of those here on the screen behind me, from the racing here in St. Petersburg, the tall ships that were in St. Petersburg, where all of our middle schools got to go see. The one in the top left is a civics field trip to Tallahassee, where many of our middle school students who are taking civics got to go to Tallahassee, meet with our local representatives from both sides of the aisle. They facilitated great tours of the Capitol, and it really actually helps students understand civics in action. So a couple of examples, and we're continuing those this year. Another big thing in the last couple of years that we really tried to push is the idea of having every single student get the resources in high school that would allow them to make the very best decision for this child and their family as they leave high school. And so one of the things we felt we were maybe not competitive with private schools was in that college counseling piece. And we really wanted to put a focus on that. And so we worked with some of our partners, the Pinellas Education Foundation, and a group called the Helios Education Foundation, to develop these college and career centers in every single one of our high schools, and added a full-time position of someone who could really counsel families and students into just that, whatever that post-secondary opportunity is. And so actually right here behind us is the College and Career Center at Boca Ciega High School, which has done a tremendous job giving students the opportunity to get more scholarships, find out what they want to do, whether it's technical college, four-year university, what have you. And so our school counselors are still completely part of that, but we've added one more additional support for students to do that and their families. And so hopefully you've seen, if you have a child in high school, some of those FAFSA events, some of the college essay writing things that we've done, really trying to prepare students for the SAT or ACT and giving them that leg up for those college programs. And so we're proud of that. Another big initiative the last couple of years is on early literacy. We have something called the Pinellas Early Literacy Initiative, but one of the things we all know is that students who are successful in early literacy endeavors normally become successful in later literacy endeavors. And so students who are prepared for kindergarten and are kindergarten ready as measured by the state's kindergarten readiness test are more likely to be proficient readers by third grade. And those students who are proficient readers in third grade normally stay proficient readers. But the opposite is also true. If you come to school unprepared, you're less likely to be a proficient reader by third grade, and you're less likely to become a proficient reader any other time in your high school or middle school career. And so we've worked really, really hard with, again, a couple of outside philanthropy partners to improve early literacy in our schools. And there's a little bit of a unique dynamic in elementary schools where they're not graded on early literacy. They're only graded on how students perform in grades 3, 4, and 5. And so for years, they focused on grades 3, 4, and 5, although it makes sense to focus on maybe how are kids doing in kindergarten and first grade. That's not how I'm measured. And so we've tried to pour additional resources into those grades, and it's been a really great success in seeing the improvement in kindergarten readiness as well as student performance in first and second and third grade in literacy. This project also includes VPK programs, our own VPK programs, as well as community providers. And so we help to train and support and upskill our local VPK programs. Big push has also been in career technical education. We operate our 2 technical colleges here in Pinellas County, and we want to see every single child in high school have the opportunity to experience one of these programs if they so choose. And so you can see a number of those, but we've really exponentially increased the number of dual enrollment opportunities for students in our Pinellas Technical Colleges, both at the college and also on the high school campus. Boca Ciega here is one of those schools that has really expanded those opportunities for students here on their campus, as well as getting over just a few blocks away to the St. Petersburg campus. Another big push I've pushed on is school climate and behavior. You can't have great academics, you can't have great schools if schools aren't orderly, if kids don't behave, if we don't enforce the rules. And so you don't need to do that by screaming and yelling all the time, but you do need to be consistent in the way that you enforce policies and rules. And I've been really clear with our principals about that. I've been really clear about we need supports in doing that. Not every student comes to school ready to do that, but we need to get them there because everybody else expects that. Parents expect all children, whether it's their own or others, to behave. And so how do we get everybody there? And so I've placed an emphasis on that school climate and behavior. And that involves a whole host of things, from how do we train teachers to better work with students who exhibit early issues in behavior, to what do we do when students are constantly disruptive, and how do we make sure they get the supports they need but also not ruin it for everybody else. And so that's been a focus. Academic competitions are also part of that student experience, and I have a couple big highlights to share, but here are some of those, from Battle of the Books to academic teams, spelling bees, robotics, and STEM. I've really placed an emphasis on that the last 2 years, and you're going to see more and more of that. Another big emphasis has been on middle schools and improving that experience in middle schools. You can't change the middle school brain of a 11, 12, 13-year-old, but you can understand the middle school brain and make school in a better situation so that they can survive and thrive. And so some of the things we've done is make it a little more hands-on. We've gone in every 6th grade science classroom and made it really change the curriculum so that it's all based on projects and laboratories and experiments. We started that last year. It's now in every middle school. That's rolled up to 7th grade in the pilot schools. You also see some work there with the TB12 Foundation and really trying to improve PE and hands-on things in PE and plyometrics and stretching and getting kids more aware of their own fitness levels. So it's been a good thing, and also adding a lot of enrichment into middle schools this year as well. That's led to a number of national recognitions the last couple of years. Just wanted to highlight a couple. Our JROTC programs, we have a great one here at Boca Ciega High School, but recently Clearwater High School's Marine JROTC was recognized as one of the top 15 battalions in the nation and went and competed in Washington, D.C. Hollins High School was the state winner in the World First Robotics Championship and went to compete in the national or the international championships. Their name was the Team Nerdvana. We didn't make that up. We're really proud of their efforts, and that now are a couple of schools or a couple of years in a row we've had a school compete in the International World First Robotics Championships. A couple of great performances by some of our performing arts programs. Tarpon Springs High School Leadership Conservatory for the Arts last year in October performed in the Grand National Competition at Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis, won the national championship for a school their size. I think finished 4th overall in the country, and 2 weeks later performed in the Macy's Day Parade, a completely different routine, and really made us proud there. And just recently, just last Friday night, it was announced that the Seminole High School Marching Band is going to perform at the Tournament of Roses Parade, preceding the Rose Bowl in January of 2025. Their band director was able to make that announcement, and as you can imagine, the students, the couple hundred in the marching band, are thrilled to do so. We're also very proud of our performance in visual arts and the performing arts. I mentioned some of the marching bands, but individually, we have a national competition called the Scholastic Art and Writing Awards, and last year, Pinellas County students earned 15 national medals, which is the most for a district our size. Included in those were 5 gold medals, and you can see those 5 students and a few of their teachers who received those at Carnegie Hall in New York City this summer. And we're really proud of the continued great work in the arts that we have, and in large part that is because of now 20 years of support for the Pinellas County Schools referendum by our voters that improves teacher salaries but also dedicates money to the arts. National Skills USA is a career technical education competition, both in high school and at the college level. And these are some of our national award winners. I believe they went to Kansas City to compete this summer in culinary, in electrical wiring, and in construction trades as well. So proud of those national winners. And maybe our most famous winner in this last year was our National Spelling Bee winner. Dev Shaw, an 8th grader at Morgan Fitzgerald Middle School, won the National Spelling Bee by spelling the word Samophile. You can write it on your index cards if you want, to win that national championship. Dev is now sort of an ambassador for these competitions across the nation, and we're really proud of him. He's now a 9th grader in one of our high schools, but it just raises the level of the entire district when you have students competing at these national levels, and we're proud of that. So I think that's going to take us, Dr. Brown, to the question and answer portion, and I'll pass it back to you for that.
Thank you, Mr. Hendrick. As Mr. Hendrick mentioned, we are moving to the question and answer portion of the evening. We have 30 minutes designated for this on the agenda. Of course, we're going to try to get through as many questions as possible in the allotted time. If you need an additional index card or have written your questions, please raise your hand, and a staff member will be by to collect or provide you with another card. For those online, you can please type in your question in the chat, and the staff will read your questions submitted online aloud. I will read the questions aloud and will give the superintendent and board members an opportunity to respond to the question. The board and the superintendent are committed to a standard of civility and decorum in conducting our community meetings. This includes refraining from clapping or making audible noises during or after a speaker or staff member comments. We appreciate you in assisting us in maintaining a civil and constructive environment. It is everyone's responsibility to ensure decorum, respect, civility for all who are present. Lastly, please note that this meeting and all comments will be broadcast live on the internet, and the video will be publicly archived. Members of the public may always communicate with the board or superintendent through their email address, board@pcsb.org or super@pcsb.org. And now we will go to our questions. And so as we continue through this, if you have a new question, please write down your question, raise your hand, and someone will be by to collect your question. First question, How will PCS address low teacher morale and the teacher shortage?
I can tell you one thing that I'm very grateful for is that we have a superintendent who was a teacher for many, many years and a principal, and he is a teacher at heart. And one of his, when he was interviewing for the job last summer, and hiring your superintendent is the single most important job of being on the school board. And we had the opportunity to do that a year ago. And so knowing that he is a teacher and he cares deeply about our teachers because they are the number one impact in a child's experience in school is that classroom teacher. And has had a great commitment over last year and this year to, as you saw, the climate and culture in our schools. And so one thing we can do certainly is help them want to come to school, help them want to come to work, create a climate and culture that values them, respects them, trusts them. And that comes from both the staff and the leadership at school. Your principal at your school, man, they are the captain of their ship. They are setting that tone every single day. So we have to have very strong leaders as principals at our schools who are setting that tone and giving teachers both the support, trust, value that they need. And they also need to hear it from parents and the community as well. So I think climate and culture is a significant piece of it. I think that everyone feels valued through remuneration, for sure. Excuse me, I stutter. Thank goodness we have speech language pathologists in our schools, or it would be much worse. So certainly teacher pay is something that we are doing our best at Pinellas County Schools, and yet it's not good enough. But if you want to look at our budget, and we can talk about money in and money out, 80% of our operational budget is spent on teacher pay and benefits, health benefits, et cetera. So there's only 20% left to cut from in order to give additional teacher pay. And I would love people's ideas. I would love for you to look at that other 20%, where that money's spent. And if you have an idea of what we can cut in order to pay our teachers more, I want to hear it. Otherwise, we've got to adjust that money in order to professionalize the salaries and wages of both our teachers and our support staff. So I certainly do think that matters. Otherwise, we can do our best when it comes to climate, culture, classroom supports, professional development, which you've done for professional development has been exceptional, and I'm happy to let others weigh in.
I would echo some of the things Mrs. Hines said. A couple things. One, I've really tried to increase employee recognition programs in the last year and a half. So we've implemented something called PCS Praise, which is an internal recognition program, just recognizing people for little things like on their birthday. I started sending emails to every employee in the district on their birthday just to say happy birthday. And many would come back to me and say, I've worked for Pinellas County Schools for 25 years and no one's ever wished me happy birthday on my birthday, even though I spend the majority of my day there. I know that those are small things, but on a larger scale, don't create our own problems, right? For our employees, there's a lot of problems in the world. Let's not create our own, right? So as a board and as superintendent, let's operate in the same direction. Let's be positive. Let's do those things. And then certainly, as much as we can, work within our budget to increase pay. So for example, this year, the legislator gave us in the teacher salary increase categorical a 1.41% increase that was given to us for teacher pay. But the tentative agreement we have with our teachers union that will go out for ratification next week will be a 4.5% increase in teacher pay. And that's because we just trimmed positions across the district, tried to find efficiencies, tighten the budget in other places, without also taking staff away that actually hurts the operation of schools, right? And so those are the types of things we try to do to make it as good as it can. In terms of recruitment of teachers, a couple of things. Number one, we want our pay to be as competitive as possible, and so we are very competitive in terms of starting teacher salary of, with ratification, $52,000 would be the highest in the Bay Area, and then our pay is the highest of certainly the local counties. But then when people get here, how do they get onboarded? So the last year, our Human Resources Department has done a whole new way of onboarding our employees to try to make it easier, more seamless. You can see some of that on our website, how employees apply, just the way that they interact, how they're treated when they come and get fingerprinted the first time, and all those types of things we've really tried to improve. But I think what Mrs. Hine touched on, and we have a couple of administrators here, at the end of the day, when you talk about morale or you talk about retention, at the end of the day, all those things are really local. A really crazy superintendent or school board can drive some people out, but really at the end of the day, people care about what's the situation in my school. And really that's what parents care about, right? All these other things can be great or not great, but how's my child's teachers? If my teachers are good, I can deal with some of the other nonsense of whatever that might be. But I need my kids' teachers to be really good. And so our principals have to work really hard to get the best teachers, to keep the best teachers, and to continually improve upon those things. And that's where I try to work with our principals so they understand that and give them the tools to do that. And so that's how we try to retain people, is by doing that. A couple other just loose ends. We are working on an employee housing project at the Tomlinson Mirror Lake project, or a property that we own. We have a couple of others that we're looking at. That's not going to solve Pinellas County's housing problems, but a couple more 100 units that our employees would have access to at a reduced market rate are some things in the right direction.
Thank you. Our next question. In terms of implementation policy, what are the practical ideas for mental health support for both students and staff? And they're asking, how does Pinellas County rank in mental health programs and support?
Great question. So a couple things. Mental health, number one, is everyone's concern, right? It is schools' concern. It should be top of mind for every parent. It should be top of mind for the community. So there are a number of ways that Pinellas County Schools supports that proactively, and then also in the moment where there's situations. So proactively, you try to set a culture where when students come to school, they feel safe physically, they feel safe mentally, they are free from bullying, they know what opportunities exist for them to have fun and enhance their day, and we want this to be part of the very best part of their day, and that increases student mental health. When those things don't happen, how are we able to respond? And so I would imagine most parents and community members are familiar with our See Something, Say Something app, where we have literally thousands of tips every year for students who have mental health concerns, whether those are life safety concerns or just smaller ones of, I think this person maybe needs some support or help or what have you. So we work that way. Over the course of the last 5 years, we've increased our ratios of school psychologists, social workers, and counselors to number of students in our schools. Part of that is because even though we've reduced the number of students in our schools because we don't have as many school-age children in Pinellas County as we did 20 years ago, we've kept the number of supports in each one of our schools. Always, we'd love to have more, but there's also a national shortage in a lot of those industries where we have vacancies in some of those and don't get any applicants sometimes for some of those positions right now. Mental health on the proactive side in terms of trying to educate parents on what they can do to support their children, trying to give parents some resources. And then we have literally, it's fair to say, dozens and dozens and dozens of community partners who support this work. And so we are not, at the end of the day, our job is not mental health. Our job is academics. But we have so many partners that when we work with a student or family and say, we think your child needs maybe this support or that support, here's some community providers that if you as a parent want to opt into those, we can help you with that, right? We can make those connections for you and give you those opportunities. I think the biggest challenge, if we're just being honest around mental health, is what's in my pocket and probably yours, social media, cell phones, and our board has had lengthy conversations about that in the last couple months, and I think we'll continue to, and in fact, that's why we're going to ask you some questions about that at the end of the night. So maybe our board members can chime in on that.
I'll add on the piece around community partners, our juvenile welfare board, which the superintendent sits on the board of that organization, the amount of research and work and just developing relationships also with the health providers out in the community, because while we have increased that ratio, I guess we would say really decrease that ratio, made it smaller, but as we've increased the amount of services we have available in our schools, we don't have enough services to provide counseling to every student every day. We certainly couldn't possibly have that amount of services, so we have to get it out into the community. I also want to make you aware, the county commission has been working hard on a number. I haven't heard that number yet. I don't know if anybody else has yet, but a one-stop number that you can call to be directly connected to counseling or mental health services. Anyone in the county can use that number. You don't have to be a student, but it won't just be passive, it'll be active. It'll be an active handoff to somebody that can get you help. So our county as a whole has also seen the real need for this. The Health and Human Services Leadership Board, it's called, which I'm a member of. It actually hasn't met in about 18 months or so, but I proposed the topic of basically information in youth and this wide access, as the superintendent indicated, whether it's phones or computers or whatnot. It's a very different day today than it was when most of us in here were growing up. My mom was worried about Madonna, and her mom was worried about Elvis. Today, I think we'd all give our right arms to just have a radio knob to turn off, but that's not the way it is it? And so what can we do? What can we do to help parents? What can we do to help provide resources? So we're working with Johns Hopkins Hospital and others with what are those resources that we can give to families to help with this as well.
Okay, our next two questions deal with dress code. So the question, dress code appears to have a spotlight on it this year. There has been a focus on calling out female students for not following dress code, but they're questioning why aren't the standards enforced the same for males, and why the disparity. Also, the method as far as lunchtime enforcement of having students called out during lunch with call-outs, which they feel has humiliation and shame by the microphone. And they want to know, why is this happening, and how does this take into account the students' mental health?
In terms of dress code, I think that just goes back to the climate behavior piece that I talked about earlier. You have rules, you have to enforce those rules. And so they absolutely should be applied fairly between males, females on campus. And so different schools, different ways, and certainly as I visit schools, I talk to school principals about that. But some schools have uniforms, some schools don't. Either way, you have to enforce your school's dress code. And it should be done uniformly and fairly, and certainly not in a way, and I don't want to maybe put these two together, but students should not be embarrassed or shamed for dress code. Those aren't, you fix it in private and you move on. And so that should always be the case. And if it's not, reach out to your school principal, and if you're not getting traction there, we have area superintendents that supervise those, or the board, or myself, because students should not be shamed. In terms of cafeterias and calling kids' names out and all those types of things, I go back to the climate and behavior piece that I started with. There's ways of enforcing rules that you don't have to embarrass children. I was a high school principal for many, many years, and I used to tell my faculty all the time, if you back a child into a corner verbally, they're going to swing verbally back at you, right? If you embarrass someone or put them in a situation, they're going to respond, and then you're going to have to respond back, right? So I've suspended students, expelled them, done a whole host of things, and done it very appropriately and quietly. And yes, there are times you have to be a little more forceful, but it should not be to disparage or embarrass children. So whoever wrote that question, when we're done, if you want to just let me know the school, and I'll have the area superintendent take a look at it. But we shouldn't be disparaging students publicly. It doesn't mean we don't correct things, but it shouldn't be to embarrass them.
Moving on, what is the district doing to stop and prevent fighting on campus?
The greatest deterrent to fighting is adult visibility and presence, right? Again, having worked in schools a long, long time, sometimes kids come to fight at school because they know the adults are going to break it up, right? They could just as easily fight in the neighborhood or some other place, and they choose not to, because they know if I come to school and do it, somebody's going to break it up really quick. And that's, I guess, reassuring to know that the adults are there and going to help with that. But in terms of what do we do to prevent those things? Number one, we create school climates that are positive and healthy, and we don't encourage sort of this idea of this is the appropriate place to come fight. Number two, tons of visibility. So principals, assistant principals, campus monitors, school safety officers, school resource officers, teachers in the hallway, all of those types of things. And then third, when those things happen, there need to be clear consequences, right? When students fight, it's not an appropriate thing to do at school. Do students have bad days and sometimes they can recover from that? Yes, but there's still going to be a consequence. And if these things are repeated, you can't stay in regular school and fight all the time. That's not what school's for. And so we have alternative schools and reassignment schools for those things. But by and large, the issue at some of our schools is that they don't have a lot of fights at all, but occasionally they'll have one, especially in a high school. And then they get filmed and then they get put out and then it looks like, oh, this is the way the school is every day. And in fact, you can walk around it for 6 weeks and have nothing and then have a bad day, and it's as if that's the way that school always is, and that's not always the case. But that's the fight that we have with social media, and we're not alone with that. Businesses are that way and other things are like that. But you have to be visible. You have to set really clear expectations. You have to create climates where those things aren't tolerated. And then you have to have consequences, but then you move on, right? Okay, you had a bad day. This happened. What do we do now?
I think I might just echo the superintendent there. I mean, I think setting the tone early in the year, and again, this comes down to the captain of that ship, who's leading the school, and certainly the captain of the big ship sets that tone early in his leadership team meetings, with his principals prior to the school year starting. So just, we have this thing called the 10-day count, where you have to submit all the number of students, and they might change the classrooms and all this kind of stuff. I kind of called it the 10-day tone one time to Mr. Hendrick, and he said, no, you've got about 2 days to set the tone in your school. I mean, it is from the minute they start that first day of school that year, you are setting that tone. And we talked this year because of discipline, of really setting a strong, clear tone. And then when something does happen, you have to act swiftly and consistently. The hard part is with so many teachers, with so many folks, that it's not always consistent. And so we're really trying to get that message out there, swift and consistent. Response to any kind of behavior. And then you have to have somewhere and someone to be able to support that student. If you're sending them out of class or you're sending them, you've got to have that staff. And so now that comes back to staffing and teacher, having that staff on hand to be able to staff, whether it's in-school suspension or all those different kinds of things. Well, but it's certainly something we care about and talk about and are working on. But if you have issues at your school, I was going to say this too about the dress code piece. Just remember that at your school level, I'm sure you have a SAC, a school advisory committee, that you can join and go to, and anything, whether it's dress code, discipline, ask those questions. Your principal is there, or an assistant principal is there, and make suggestions on how things can be better, or say, this is what I'm hearing from other parents in our school. That's the place you can really make changes in your individual school level if things are not being applied swiftly and consistently.
I want to make just one additional comment to that. Your schools want you to be involved. They want parents involved. They want their community members involved. So don't feel like your schools don't want you there. They want you there, and we really, really encourage you to participate, because we can't do it alone. It's not just on the schools. We need our communities to back up and support and work as a collaboration, and it just makes a better environment overall for everybody. So please go support your schools and help your schools. We want you there, and they want you there.
I'm sorry, I have to piggyback on that too. This is because I remember after I was first elected and I met Dr. Vasquez, who's over high schools, all the high school stuff at the district level, and she said, I really love what you did for engagement at your elementary school, but could you please get parents to engage in high school and middle school? I think when our kids are cute and little, it's fun to go to PTA meetings and it's fun to do our little things, but then they get a little weird as they're getting older, and so we kind of back off maybe. But they need us in middle school and high school, and the teachers need us. High school students today, when I was at that SRNR thing I mentioned earlier, high school students today said, I wish we had like some fun ways to connect as a school community. I remember when I was in elementary school, we had like a school potluck, or I wish we had, and I thought, oh my gosh. And that's where parents come in. That's where that PTA works. So I wouldn't take that for granted. So as our kids get older, whether it's middle school, high school, stay engaged in your schools.
Thank you, board members. Next question, Osceola Seminole Middle and Pinellas Park Middle are some of the schools involved in a 6-period pilot program. Music and the arts are showing decreased numbers in these schools due to the pilot. What will be done to improve the pilot program to ensure our arts programs are not being negatively affected?
Yeah, good question. So we have a pilot at 6 middle schools to look at an enrichment period as opposed to 7 period days. So 6 periods plus an enrichment. And in that enrichment, students select the thing that they want to do, and it may not be the same all year. And so one of the things, anytime you reduce the number of periods, you are going to naturally reduce the number of electives. And so whether it's the arts or AVID or PE or whatever the other elective might be, world language, how do you continue to grow those programs? And so we're studying that. That's why you do pilots. You don't do it as a whole district-wide. But what we've seen is the opportunity for students to use that enrichment period to do those arts programs. So while they may not be in a year-long arts class, they may be in the jazz band for 6 weeks, and they do a performance, and then they rotate over to something in the visual arts, or they might rotate over to something in STEM. So we're studying it. There's a lot of school districts that have done this very successfully. Part of that is looking at middle school, as I mentioned earlier, a little more like elementary school and a little less like high school in the 6th grade year. So don't just jump in 7 periods and good luck to you and figure it out. But could you maybe partner with some teachers and be teamed and maybe have this opportunity for enrichment where you're kind of directing a little bit of what you want to do, which is really important to the middle school brain and kind of socialization. So that's why we're doing it and looking at it. But there are consequences, and one of those consequences is fewer electives full-time, but maybe more electives on a rotating basis. And so we're studying it, and we'll see how it goes, and then we'll go from there.
What are the steps being taken to help the LMT position in schools to balance tech and library needs?
So over the course of the last, 4 years, as we've now gone one-to-one in every one of our schools with computers for every student from 1st grade to 12th grade, certainly the management of those devices is more burdensome. And so every single school has a library media technology specialist who assists with that. Every one of our secondary schools has what's called a technology technician, a tech, who is more of the tech part of that, right? Doesn't run the library program, but runs the tech side of things. And then they also have something that's called a technology coordinator, which is typically a person at their school who helps to support that. And so, how do we support those things? We've given additional hours in the summer to run those programs. We've asked teams to help distribute that technology, and once it gets out and running, it's typically easy, but it's a little overwhelming to start with. And where it's overwhelming at certain schools, whether the person's new or they're just behind or struggling, we try to send in teams to help. But the benefits of students having that device has been really, really important for extending the learning day and creating this sort of equitable system of technology so that every child in our school system can go home and have access to the internet and be able to practice and work on their homework and through Canvas or Clever or whatever that might be. So we're supporting with that. But we also check with principals all the time. And as I visit schools, I ask about, tell me about this position in your school, whether it's a library media specialist or the data management technician in the front office, or if it's a campus monitor, because we have to monitor all of those positions. It's not just one group, but every single group to make sure work is distributed equitably. And so we do that quite frequently, and I think the board members do that as they visit schools as well. I know they do.
Okay, we have 5 questions and 8 minutes and 5 questions left. Next question. With all the positive changes and efforts made to public education, when did it become acceptable for children to receive grades for participating rather than mastery and knowledge?
Well, we have pretty clear policies that grades are based on content knowledge, so they shouldn't be based on just straight out participation. Having said that, there's value in collaborating and talking and participating with your classmates, participating in conversations in the classroom. And again, that's part of that experience, right? If this whole thing was just about go home and read the book and take a test, do we really need schools if it's just going to be about sitting and taking tests? So there is an element, but certainly grades are based on content knowledge. That's in our policy.
Okay. Next question. If there is a disagreement with a local school or a district staff over procedures or policy, who at the district can mediate or provide legal option?
So real easy, just kind of follow that chain of command. If you're having an issue with a teacher, you talk to the principal or assistant principal. If you're running into issues with the principal, their boss is the area superintendent. And in fact, for all of you in Area 3, if you came because you got that voicemail, it's Dr. Hines, who's in the back of the room. Wave Dr. Hines with the bow tie, and can help to do that. And then from there, it just depends on what the nature of the issue is. Do you feel like a policy of the school board is being applied inappropriately? You would talk to perhaps a board member who oversee those policies. If you feel like the area superintendent isn't supporting a procedure in a certain way, then, well, I'm the boss of the area superintendent, so you could reach out to me. So it would just depend on what the nature of the issue is. We do have a school board attorney. We have a staff attorney, depending on what that is. And then Dr. Brown and his team even have parent advocates. So if it's something with an individual education plan or something that you just need help navigating the system, some of our strategic partnerships just helps parents with just navigating that system.
I would just add also, on our website, the little contact us bubble, when you go to that, it's this whole platform called Let's Talk, and you can pick any kind of area. So you could pick transportation, you could pick cafeteria, I think, you could pick library, media technology. I mean, you can pick from all these different categories, or even just do a general. And those, when you submit that question or email or a policy clarification question, the school board sees every single one of those every week. Those are received and distributed. Somebody will get an answer, and what they send to us at the end of the week, it has the original question and it has the answer and the staff member who answered it. So it's not just some passive platform with an email that goes to nowhere. So I highly recommend you hit that contact us button. If you have a question about anything, and it will get funneled to the right person, and it will get answered. And then our email for all 7 of us is board@pcsb.org, and we get all of those as well. So.
At the Bogosiega High School, the fundamental school within a school model means classes are very mixed. How can we ensure our students are having a more authentic fundamental experience?
Yeah, I think that's a little specific, but generally that's a master schedule issue. So Ms. Gill is here, and I'm sure can help to answer that, whoever asks that question later. But for any of our magnet programs, they are designed to be school within a school programs, and so you try to cohort students. But as anybody who's been in school before knows, you can't perfect do anything, because not every student takes the same class. So, your 9th grade students may be in 5 different math classes, everything from regular algebra all the way up to Algebra 2 honors and things in between. And so that cohorting and scheduling of students can be a little bit of a challenge. But with a program like Fundamental or some of those, they're typically able to be a little more homogeneous with that. So Ms. Gill is here and can maybe answer that afterwards for that parent who has that question. Thanks.
And this is a question that's probably going to be answered individually. We probably need more information, but it says, what are the consequences for a parent that is making life difficult for their own child and the other parent when emotional abuse and bullying has been presented to the administration?
Just at a high level, again, there might be some specifics there, but high level, we operate in society, and so we have every type of family in our schools, 2-parent household, single-parent household, divorce, everything in between. So when there's issues legally, we have real clear policy when you get into policy on parental rights and who's the caregiver and what does the court say. And so our attorneys help walk through those situations and really clearly define what those things are. It is terrible when schools are put in the middle of parents who are in a clear power struggle that has nothing to do with the school and the child's being negatively impacted. And so what do? We try to make the child's day as best we can. We try to counsel parents the appropriate way. But at the end of the day, we do really rely heavily on legal advice to make sure we are following whatever the parenting plan is that the court has set out. We don't make up our own rules when it comes to that. We have a really clear policy that's in board policy and in student code of conduct, and then we rely on our attorneys for that. But obviously, we try to get parents to do what's best for the child.
And our final question, which might have 3 different opinions. We touched upon academic standards, dress code, and mental health. What is the largest challenge the district is dealing with?
I would say that we actually just had this conversation on Tuesday, I think. We had a workshop with our board and our superintendent. I think getting real communication and real information out to all of our families and our schools and staff, real, clear, accurate, concise information to everybody affected by our district is probably the biggest challenge that we have. And with all the avenues that we have to communicate, there's still a lot of either misinformation or unclear information within our district. Like I said, from everybody that works in our schools, from children, parents, everybody involved. So I think that is probably our biggest, and may always be maybe our biggest challenge. But anybody else has ideas about that, as Ms. Hine has requested? We always want participation and ideas and suggestions from our community.
I would echo that. We talked about communication, and we said it doesn't matter in an organization like ours with 100,000 students and families and 15,000 employees, or an organization with 10 employees. Communication is always a challenge. And so the other thing I would say, just more maybe globally, is I think we're facing a long-term challenge in teacher shortages that is not unique to Pinellas County. It is a nationwide phenomenon. I know we have a university partner here tonight. You know, the enrollment in university college of education programs has declined dramatically in the last 2 decades. The treatment of public employees has declined in the last 2 decades. And so it's our job to make our school system as positive and as upbeat to attract people and keep people, and not let some of those other things infiltrate. Whether they're true or not true, leave them on the sidelines and move forward. Because we need the very best in front of our children, and that's just going to be a challenge over the course of the next couple of decades in education.
I definitely echo both of those things. You know, I think a real challenge facing all of us is really needing people to engage, to re-engage. You know, I think that you know, all of you are here tonight because you're people who want to engage. You want to hear what's going on. You want to ask questions. You want to participate in the process. But I think over a period of time, there's been some apathy. You know, people thinking, oh, things are just messed up. You know, this or that. We have. I said it earlier. Democracy is not a spectator sport. This country is built and rebuilt every day by every single one of us. And so whether it's in your schools or it's at your little leagues or your church or temple or, you know, whatever your places are that you participate, or if you want to volunteer somewhere, but being engaged. And I just so firmly believe that our public schools are what create that common fabric of being American. And so I think the more advocacy we can have around attending and strengthening, participating in, investing in our public education system is frankly crucial to the future of our country. I think so. I think, you know, if we want the best and brightest students, we've got to have the best and brightest teachers. And we need people knocking down our doors applying for those jobs. So what does it take to get there? Well, it's going to take some investment. And if we have so much money in this state flowing around that we can just send it all these other places, what could we do with that money? What could we do with that in public education for all of our kids? We can invest more in that early learning that our superintendent was talking about, whether, you know, pre-K3, pre-K4, even earlier, even 0 to 3 type programs. We can invest in those early literacy and literacy coach programs. We can double the number of guidance counselors and counselors we have available in our students and make sure these college and career centers and those pathways are strong. And we can continue to inspire civic engagement in our students. These young people are our future. We need them to be involved in continuing to help us form this more perfect union and get us in that future that I think we all want for the world. So that's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping that we can have people who use words to inspire everyone to engage to make the world what we want it to be.
Thank you, everyone, for your questions tonight, and a special thanks to Mrs. Hines, Mrs. Peters, and Superintendent Hendrick for being here to answer the questions from our stakeholders. Now I'm going to turn it back over to Superintendent Hendrick to give an overview of our strategic plan and to let everyone know how they can provide direct input to inform the board and the district leadership. Superintendent Hendrick.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. And I want to just mention earlier tonight, Mrs. Hines said thank you for coming and spending a couple of hours with us. And I don't know if anybody in the room went, what, 2 hours? I didn't commit to that. So we've been here an hour, and I'm going to take about 3 more minutes, and then you're free to do whatever you want, give us more feedback, talk to us all night. But I did want to just share our district strategic plan. We have recently renewed this district strategic plan in a 3-year plan with our school board. We spent about a year going out and doing sessions like this, talking to faculty, talking to students, some of those leadership summits I mentioned earlier, to really say what are the key things that we should be focusing on to elevate our school district and what are the key goals. And so these are our 6 strategic priorities, and we settled on with input from parents and the community and our board through hours and hours and hours and hours of public sessions, 16 objectives that we want to try to improve over the course of the next 3 years. And these are things that will accelerate and the performance of our students and improve our school district in every single way. And within these, there are a lot of strategies, there are specific things, but I think you'll see academics, you'll certainly see some operational things, but just because a couple of the questions, those positive staff experiences. You know, I mentioned the challenge of teachers. The reason that's so important is they solve those other problems that Dr. Brown mentioned. Great teachers have students that have fewer mental health issues. Great teachers improve academics for students in ways that nobody else can. Great teachers don't have classroom behavior issues in their classroom. So that's a real key component to this. So tonight, one of the opportunities is as we conclude in a moment or two, you can see these. They're going to be on a couple of the posters in the back. And if you have feedback on any of those, you can put sticky notes on there. If you want to talk to one of us about one of these priorities or some of the ideas that we have to accelerate these pieces, we're here to hear those and listen to those. But we also wanted your feedback tonight specifically about cell phones. It was mentioned our board has had this conversation recently at a workshop, and it's also been renewed in conversation with our state representatives in Tallahassee. So recently, this last legislative session, this portion of the law was added that basically put into law what we had already had in practice, which was students cannot use their cell phones in class unless a teacher gives express permission for an academic purpose. And so that's now in law, although that was in our policy and practice prior to that. But there's a lot of other ways that students can use their phones at school. And we've had this conversation with our board and the public around what is the mental health aspects of this. And is it just better for students to just not have to deal with it for 6 hours a day and let them deal with those things later on? And so should they be allowed to use it before school, during lunch, during passing periods? And we, in our policy, we actually allow the permission for that, but we delegate that responsibility to schools. And so essentially in elementary schools, students are not allowed to have phones at all, with the exception of it's just in a backpack and you know, parents can call them after school. In our middle schools, for the most part, we don't allow phones in passing periods or lunch, obviously not in class. And in our high schools, for the most part, we allow them during passing time and during lunch, but not during class. And so the state law requires that students can have them for emergency purposes, but then how do you sort of navigate that, particularly in a high school where the student's allowed to have it in the passing period, and now they're coming into classroom and put your phone away, turn it off, all these types of things. And so that's what the law was trying to address. So you can kind of see where other districts are, and our board is going to be discussing this in the coming months as we look at our code of conduct for next year. And so we'd really like your opinion as parents in the school district and community members, what you're feeling on should they be allowed at all in elementary, at all in middle school, at all in high school, obviously for emergencies, but what about passing time and lunchtime? And so you can see how other districts' codes of conduct stand right now and where we sit as a school district. Here's a couple of examples just from classrooms. Some teachers have students put them in these little cell phone cases or carriers. Most teachers just say, keep it in your pocket or in your backpack and out of sight. A lot of our teachers have signage in their classrooms just reminding students, and it's not just cell phones but also earbuds. Really difficult to say that you're paying attention in class if you have headphones on. I mean, it's just, logically. So we've really worked around those things, but really want to have a unified way as a school district to do that. So tonight, either using the QR code, if you're online, you can do it as well with the form, but using the posters in the back, if you want to post your thoughts on the cell phone policy or on the district strategic plan, we encourage you to do that. You can also just share those directly with us. And so I think I'll pass it back to Dr. Brown to just wrap us up and say goodnight, and then the three of us will be here for individual conversations as well as other district staff. Dr. Hines, I mentioned, is in the back. And I do want to thank our communications crew who comes out and does this with us each night and puts this together. Thank you, guys.
Once again, thank everyone for coming out tonight, especially the special thanks to our SAC chairs who came out tonight to represent their school and to voice those opinions, those concerns of the schools to our district leadership and the superintendent. At this time, as Superintendent mentioned, we would like to invite you to visit the room and to provide input around the different stations that deal with not only our cell phone policy but also our district strategic plan. So once again, thank you for coming out. You all please provide input and have a safe ride home. Good night. Thank you.